Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear listeners, welcome to another episode or another program of Quranic Reflections with me, Muhammad Saeed, and Sheikh Noorud-deen. And as if you've been listening for the past few weeks, we've been talking about the vast area of marriage. And we've been covered some of the things like rights and responsibilities, character. I think were some of the areas that are covered, and also the actual ceremonies as well. I think those are the things that we've covered. And and Sheikh, what topics would we be covering today?
Today, inshallah, we'll focus more on hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, speaking about more related to seeking a partner.
Right.
So this is more prior to marriage, how to go about seeking the right person, what to look for, what to avoid, and some practicalities, what's permitted, what's not, with regards to this. So inshallah ta'ala we'll work through that today.
Inshallah. So when it comes to seeking a partner, one of the most oft asked questions is that about meeting and speaking and seeing, and it's because it's free mixing obviously is not permitted, and being I think you ran a course recently on rights and responsibilities, and I think if I recall correctly, you said being in seclusion in khalwa with somebody who's mahram to or non-mahram to, sorry, I beg your pardon, or non-mahram to oneself is obviously not permitted. So with that in mind, what does the Deen say, what does the Quran and Sunnah say about meeting and seeing a potential spouse?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So, inshallah, we will begin with a couple of hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we'll go into some explanation with regards to them. The first one is from Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the arwah, the souls, are junudun mujannada, which is difficult to translate, but I think according to majority of scholars, the understanding is junudun mujannada means that they are of different types, different categories. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ said that souls, or arwah, ruh, are of different types and categories. Those which come to know each other may get on well with each other, or may be repelled from one another. Okay. Many of the ulama relate this back to this particular hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. They relate it back to what's called Alam al-Arwah or Yawm al-Ahd, and it has various names. This is spoken about in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the Quran how He subhanahu wa ta'ala took the human race from the loins of Adam alayhi salam and had them bear witness to Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And they said, Bala shahidna. This is in the Quran. Many of the ulama, they say that this hadith actually relates to that event, that not only did that happen, because the Quran goes on and gives a little bit more detail, not a great amount of detail, but some more detail with regards to what happened on that day. In English, we tend to call it the Day of the Covenant. What happened? Obviously, this happened. This is clearly mentioned in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented Himself to the people. However that took place, we don't know, because He's not restricted by time and space and color and such things. He's exalted above these things. But in one way or another, this was done. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to them, am I not your Lord? They said, indeed we bear witness that you are. And then later on in that same part of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions at least one reason for doing so. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so that they do not deny it afterwards. Okay, meaning they do not deny having any experience of this afterwards. And this is why we have related hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that every child is born on fatra, on the primordial state. This is understood to mean that every child or every soul comes into this world recognizing the existence of God subhanahu wa ta'ala. But anyway, we'll speak about that inshallah in more detail. Very, very important and interesting topic. But to come back to our subject matter here, many scholars, they said that this hadith relates to that on that particular day when all of the arwah, all of the souls, they were gathered, they came together, they had a period of time where they went and they, if you like, met or mingled with each other. And some, they they met particular individuals and they got on, and others, they met particular individuals and they were repelled. Okay, and those that got on, when they meet each other in the dunya, in this life here, they'll feel a connection even though they've never met this person. This happens sometimes with an individual. The first time they've ever met this person, but they feel a strong connection.
I was going to say like me and you. But no, I'm just joking. I don't know whether that's true or not. Inshallah it is.
Inshallah. And others, they'll be repelled. And again, they won't know why. Some of the ulama related this hadith to that particular incident and put it in that context. Whether we put it in that context or not, the hadith clearly speaks about that arwah, they are, or souls, they are of different types. And some, when they come together, they'll find this inclination towards each other, and others will be repelled for no particular reason, but it will happen. And why do I mention this to begin with? Some of the scholars, they said that this is an important evidence. There's more explicit evidence coming later on, but this is an important evidence for meeting prior to marriage.
Oh, right.
So you sit with this person, obviously in the right setting.
Yes.
You sit with this individual, be it the girl sitting with the male or vice versa, and you get some kind of feeling. With how do you feel about this person in front of you? Is there something that's not quite right? You see, in our culture here, they say, the gut feeling's not there.
The chemistry.
The chemistry, if we speak about something stronger, see, is it there or is it not? It could be something as strong as, that you feel very strong. It could be something weaker, something doesn't quite sit right. You can't put your finger on it. You can't really understand it, but something's not there. So, this is something some of the ulama used as an encouragement to meet prior to marriage, potential spouse to meet this person prior to marriage. More explicit evidences, the next one is from the hadith book of Imam Ahmad, Musnad al-Ahmad, and it's a Hasan hadith narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا خَطَبَ أَحَدُكُمَ الْمَرْأَةِ, when one of you, or if one of you proposes to a woman, فَإِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَنْ يَنْظُرَ مِنْهَا إِلَى مَا يَدْعُوهُ إِلَى نِكَاحِهَا فَلْيَفْعَلْ. If he is able to look at her, to see her, then let him do so. Okay, this is a hadith. I'm going to come back to this hadith just related to a discussion the ulama had. But just let me quote one final hadith before we speak about this issue in more detail. The final hadith I want to quote for now is from Tirmidhi. It's a Hasan hadith, where it's narrated the Prophet ﷺ was approached by a Sahabi who said, I have proposed for the hand of a woman, and the Prophet ﷺ said to her, go and look at her. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, for indeed it is more likely that your marriage will continue and survive and last if you look at her. Okay, so these hadith I wanted to quote for now. We'll come to some more later on, inshallah. But especially the third one, the wording of the Prophet ﷺ is actually a command. In Arabic language, it is called fi'l amr, it's the command form. فَانظُرْ إِلَيْهَا. Go and look at her. It's not considered an obligation, legally speaking. It's considered a recommendation. We could even say that it's a sunnah to do so. But here it's quite clear the Prophet ﷺ is strongly encouraging this, that he should go and he should look at this lady prior to actually getting married. And this is important for him and it's important for her.
Right. Okay. So just because it was a male, a Sahaba, that he was speaking to, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually relates only to males.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And this is important for both parties.
Okay.
It's important for both parties. So I said I was going to come back to that other hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, if you are able to look at her, then do so. That was the second to last hadith, the one Ahmad I quoted. Here some of the ulama, they have a discussion with regards to this. What's the difference between this and the other hadith? They said in the other hadith, the setting is such that you go, you arrange. You see, the female knows you're coming and you sit and you meet and you see each other, and there's no harm if they speak to each other, what have you. Okay, although the hadith doesn't mention that explicitly. Okay, but this particular hadith, if you're able to see her, then do so. Many of the ulama understood this to mean that this is in the context where you don't have that arrangement. Okay,
Right, okay.
So if you can, just she's. In our context, she works somewhere. She picks up her children from some place or what have you, or she's goes to such and such a place. Okay. I don't want to.
You're not encouraging stalking,
That's precisely what came to my mind. This is not encouraging stalking, which is
Yeah.
absolutely prohibited.
Of course,
Even though it's in the context of a joke at the moment, it's a serious matter,
course
and
it
very,
is.
very dangerous, causes a lot of harm. But that's not the point. The point here is that if you can, put yourself in a situation, you could just briefly see this person without having that formal setting, then that's fine also. Because the point is that you know what this person looks like. But obviously what the Prophet ﷺ encouraged far more strongly, and the first protocol is to have this arrangement, you see, and not just to see each other, but also to be able to speak to each other a little bit, inshallah ta'ala. Now, and as we spoke about earlier, so both parties know what the intent of this gathering is, and both parties get to see each other. Now,
So the thing is, and as you say, by doing that, then one discovers where, whether one has that feeling in one's heart.
Yeah, this is an aspect of it. An aspect of it is what we spoke about. Is that do you feel that inclination towards this individual? If you like, at the spiritual level. But there's also a physical aspect to this.
Yeah. Okay.
There's
no contradiction in having in having a physical attraction.
No, this
to
is
somebody.
important.
Yeah.
The ulama mentioned this, and this is one of the hadith I intended to speak about today, which is in Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, تُنْكَحَ الْمَرْأَةُ لِأَرْبَعَ لِمَالِهَا وَلِحَسَبِهَا وَلِجَمَالِهَا وَلِدِينِهَا فَاظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. What does this hadith mean? Narrated by Abu Hurairah in Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, a woman is married for four: for her wealth, for her nobility, for her beauty, and for her religiosity. And then the Prophet ﷺ went on to say, فَاظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ. Okay, that attain to the one of or the one who has greater religiosity. Attain to this one. Try to find such a person. The many of the scholars who commented on this, they said here what you find is a Prophet ﷺ clearly and strongly encouraging that of all of these four characteristics, the most important is religion or religiosity or one's devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Clearly, that's absolutely explicit and clear in the hadith. But what they said also is that the Prophet ﷺ didn't negate the others.
No,
okay,
he didn't.
And especially they comment on beauty. In particular, they comment on beauty, that the Prophet ﷺ didn't negate that. So that is not only a valid consideration, but also a very important consideration. Okay. In another hadith, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and mentioned, again, similar to the previous, the hadith from Tirmidhi I quoted earlier, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he proposed for somebody, and the proposal been accepted. So this is the level of the engagement having been done. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, "Have you seen her?" He said, "No." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, "Go and look at her." And then this is important. At the end of the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, فَإِنَّ فِي أَعْيُنِ الْأَنصَارِ شَيْئًا, for indeed in the eyes of the Ansar is something. This is a literal translation. I'll explain it inshallah ta'ala, but this is the literal translation, that indeed in the eyes of the Ansar there is something. Okay. What is this something? The commentators on hadith, they differed. Some of them said that the eyes of the Ansari people generally, and in this case women, the Ansari women, by the way, are those or people, sorry, men and women, are those companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who resided in Medina. You have those in Mecca who are called the Muhajirun, the migrants, and you have those in Medina who are called the Ansar, the helpers. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this. They said, the commentators, they said, what does this mean? Some said that they had a different color. They had like a blue tint in their eyes. Okay. Others said that their eyes were slightly different. Okay. It can be taken to mean that it can be taken to mean that there was something which that a Qurayshi person would either not like so much, so go and have a look. There's no point getting married and then after you find out that this person, you're not actually attracted to this person. It could be the opposite as well. Okay, it could be that this was something actually positive. You see, and the Prophet ﷺ, this relates back to the other hadith in that case, that have a go and see your potential spouse because it is more likely to last between you. Okay. So in this particular hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging this and actually giving a reason with regards to the physical appearance of the other person. That's far more explicit even than the hadith I quoted from Bukhari and Muslim. So yes, it's important. We have it from hadith, we have it from the practice of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, and we have it from the writings of the ulama. They mentioned that this is an important consideration. It should not be the primary consideration.
Of course,
That's what the hadith in Bukhari is teaching us. That the primary, the most important consideration is religion. Okay. And in another hadith in Tirmidhi, which according to Imam Tirmidhi is a Hasan hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned the following words: if a person comes to you and seeks the hand of your relative, and this could be daughter, this could be sister, this could be whoever. Okay, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't specify. And seeks the hand of your relative, if you are pleased with regards to his religion, deen or religiosity, and his khuluq or akhlaq, his character, then marry your relative to him. For if you do not do so, there will be great fitna. Fitna can be translated in different ways. It can be translated as temptation in this context. It can be translated as tribulations, as trials. All of these things come under the meaning of the word fitna. There will be great fitna in the upon the land, upon earth. Okay. So here the Prophet ﷺ mentioned something as well as religiosity. We may say that these two, they are part, the character, good character is absolutely a part of religion, and the Prophet ﷺ taught this in many, many hadiths. So why in this hadith did the Prophet ﷺ separate it? Whose religiosity or religion you are pleased with, and whose character you pleased with? Because many people, unfortunately, don't see it like that. They see religiosity as ritual worship, you see, and these kind of things, and they don't consider character to be a part of it. So here the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make it clear for even for those people who make this division, okay, that both of these are important. How God-fearing is this particular individual, and at the same time, what is this person's character like? Even though they should go hand in hand. But the point is, if somebody prays and worships a great deal but doesn't have good character with people, it's probably not a good idea.
Because there's a disconnect between the character, which is an inextricable part of one's faith.
One's faith and religious practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, to what extent then is one permitted to, and for what reasons is one permitted to see a person? Because an oft asked question again is, well, how long is or how long is too long to actually to see a prospective person, spouse for marriage? Up to what extent? Is one allowed to see? How many? People ask for. Well, is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5 meetings? People ask for a particular, duration. What is there to be said about that?
Okay.
Does it come down to intention?
Yes, a part of it is down to intention. The first thing I would like to is slightly disconnected from the particular point here, but I want to mention it because I may forget to mention it afterwards. Okay. Something to mention is that once the engagement is done, then these two people, they cannot carry on as if they are married. Okay. Right, okay. A lot of people, and I think somebody actually asked me to mention this and said that this is a misconception that people have. Okay. When the engagement is done, legally speaking, according to the sacred law, nothing changes. So the same way you would interact with this person prior to engagement is the same as afterwards. This is different to nikah, the actual marriage contract. Once marriage contract is done, they're husband and wife. They're free to, behave however they wish.
Right.
Okay. But prior to that, whether there's a engagement or no engagement, in Arabic they call this khitbah. Okay, whether there's this khitbah or not, there's this engagement or not, it makes no difference with regards to what's permitted and what's prohibited. Right, Everything that was prohibited beforehand remains prohibited. Right, Nothing changes. This is important to mention. Now, coming back to the question at hand, what's permitted? What we'll find with the hadith that I quoted, and even in the writings of the ulama, this is not incredibly prescriptive. Okay. Even the hadith, some may say the hadith kind of indicates one because it didn't say anything else. You could incline towards that, but it's not explicit at all with regards to one. But you could say that, but it's open. So we can conclude that the hadith is not explicit that this has to be one meeting, or it can be an endless number of meetings. So what did the scholars say with regards to this? They generally said that they can meet as long as there's a need. Okay. Right. This, we shouldn't
to ascertain compatibility. You would
precisely.
Say? Is that a legitimate need?
Precisely. Okay. So they can meet as long as there's a need to work out whether they are compatible for each other. Okay. And either physically looking at each other, one sitting should suffice. You see, whereas to work out this person's views and opinions and how this person intends to live as a married couple.
Good practical aspects are important as well.
Yeah, practical aspects, and also to try to understand if you're on the same wavelength, if you like. You see, so for these things, you may require more than one. Even then, it is supposed to be limited. You see, I don't know.
It shouldn't continue indefinitely, of course.
Precisely. And I would say, in my experience, a lot of people, I try to help them with marriage and such things. And, usually one or two sittings suffice for people. You see, doesn't really make a lot of sense for this couple to sit again and again and again, So I can't see where they would need to sit 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Any 1 or 2, possibly 3, this should suffice. Why? And this we'll speak about more after the break. Why? Because the emphasis in no way, in the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, the emphasis was in no way, get to know this person yourself, and you'll know whether you're marrying the right person or not. The emphasis was far more on seek references.
Right.
So you may sit with this person 20, 30 times.
And still not know what they're like.
Still not know what they're truly like.
Right,
but if you seek references, seek information from those reliable, trustworthy people who do know them well, then inshallah you're likely to get a much better picture.
Yes.
Rather than you meeting this person and this person meeting you, both of you have got your fronts there. See? It's there, this very most perfect, pleasant personality that you can portray. It's there, but you don't really get the opportunity to scratch beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
Until after the nikah is done. So this is why there's far more emphasis, rather than on these meetings, there's far more emphasis on seeking references. And even more important, to be honest with you, is what we're going to speak about after the break, istikhara, and to seek assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Subhanallah. May Allah give us the tawfiq to practice upon what we've heard. We've got come to the end of the first part of the show, and we've got these few messages, and we'll be back shortly. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
या अल्लाह हमारे जहनों में इस्लाम का सही तसव्वुर कायम फरमा। या रब्बुल आलमीन हमारे दिलों में अपने हबीब नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की सच्ची मोहब्बत पैदा फरमा दे। या इलाहुल आलमीन हमारे दुनियावी और दीनवी तमाम मामलात को दुरुस्त फरमा दे। या अल्लाह हमारे सीनों में इस्लाम की सच्ची तड़प पैदा फरमा। या रब्बुल आलमीन हम सबको नमाज पढ़ने, पाबंदी से नमाज पढ़ने और बाजमात नमाज पढ़ने की तौफीक अता फरमा। आमीन सुम्मा आमीन।
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to Quranic Reflections, and to continue on from the first part of the program, where we're talking about meeting, seeing, and ascertaining compatibility, as you were advising, Sheikh. And the other thing is that to seek, you mentioned seeking advice. I mean, to seek nasiha is generally is the sunnah in all permissible matters anyway.
Absolutely.
So how does that relate to seeking references with regards to marriage? Is there any contradiction in seeking advice in that regard?
No, this is very, very important, and this is really, with regards to finding out whether this person is compatible for one or not. This is important.
Right.
I would suggest a lot of people don't give it its due importance, you see, but the point is it's strongly encouraged. Here, the hadith I quoted earlier, have Sahabi coming to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In another hadith, which is in Bukhari, we have a Sahabiya, Fatima bint Qais, coming to the Prophet ﷺ and seeking advice. She said, Muawiyah and Abu Jaham have both asked for my hand in marriage. And the Prophet ﷺ advised her that don't marry either of them. And rather encouraged her to marry a third person. Right. So we have it with Sahabiyat, we have it with Sahaba coming to the Prophet ﷺ, asking the Prophet ﷺ's advice, asking regarding the character or religiosity of particular individuals. We find it with the Sahaba afterwards, you see. And it's important to ask the right people. Obviously, they were blessed. The Sahaba were honored. They were blessed. They had the Prophet sallallahu.
Yeah, but we don't. We don't
have that the same access that they had, unfortunately. But we still.
So, who was the best person to
subhanallah, the Prophet sallallahu. They didn't need to go to anybody else. Let's go to the Prophet sallallahu suffices. Whereas after the passing of the Prophet sallallahu, we don't have this direct access. We still have much access to the Prophet sallallahu. We still gain much blessings from the Prophet sallallahu. We study the hadith, we study the seerah. We try to build our love and connection for the Prophet sallallahu. We get a great deal of benefit from that, but it's not the same.
Yeah, but ultimately, I suppose, in actually seeking the right person, we should actually, by studying the seerah, we become the right person ourselves.
Inshallah, studying and implementing the seerah, we become, inshallah, we attempt to become the right person. After the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to the Sahaba used to ask each other's advice, and regarding all matters. The important point is to ask the right people. Ask a person who's balanced, not somebody who just is going to praise without due consideration. This is reckless. I feel this is reckless on behalf. A lot of people consider that religious. You see, somebody comes and asks you about such and such a person. You don't know the person too well, but you say, "Oh, yes, he's really this, really good, and really," because you only know him in a particular context.
Sure.
This is why, as I mentioned before, when people ask me for references, especially if it's related to my students, I'll mention something, but prior to mentioning, sometimes I won't say anything, but sometimes I will say, this is what I know of this person, but I'd always mention at the beginning or at the end, but I'm his or her teacher. Not only teacher, but teacher of the deen, religious teacher. I'm going to, and we should practice this. We should try to upgrade our standards of behavior and try to upgrade our level of etiquette and such matters when we are in religious settings. There's nothing wrong with that. This is good and it's required, but the fact that is the case and that is a religious teaching, to have those very high standards, I'm privy to those high standards alone and not to anything else. So I will tend to mention that, I know this about the person, but I'm this person's teacher. I'm not the right person for you to ask, and especially I'm the religious teacher. You see, I see the best of this person's behavior. So if everybody was to ask me, they're only going to get, this is the best or what have you.
Because there's a pressure there, a positive pressure, I hasten to add, on part of the students to obviously to demonstrate a particular, or to be a particular, unconsciously, of course, that you're in the presence of of somebody of knowledge, of somebody of status in terms of their knowledge and their piety. So, as what you're saying is that because you see that side, that's the only side you see. You don't live with them. You don't trade with them or anything in that regard. So
so that's important. But how I try to get around that, I will mention what I know, inshallah ta'ala, if I feel it's useful, but I will mention that.
Yes.
Whereas if I was to avoid mentioning that, if I was just to say, oh, this person's really nice, and this person's really this, and this person's really religious, or has brilliant character, or what have you, if I was to say that without mentioning that, well, I only know that as a teacher, I feel it's misguiding. And I feel it would be reckless on my part. So this is advice to myself and anybody who's asked with regards to this. Unless you really know the person and you feel confident that you really know the person, don't offer such advice. You see, because you may offer all of this advice and give such a glowing reference for the individual. You don't really know this individual, and they get married and they cause each other a lot of upset and a lot of harm, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So it's important. It's a really important matter, and this is why the ulama mentioned that if you're asked with regards to such things like marriage and trade or what have you, two people are looking to go into business together or anything of such importance, then it's an obligation,
of course,
and it's a trust. If you do know something negative, then you and you're sure about it, not conjecture, you see, and you're sure about it, then you must mention it. And in this context, it will not be considered to be under the prohibition of backbiting. Rather, it would be an obligation because of the seriousness of the situation. This is somebody who's intending to spend their life with us. This other
it's a big
individual.
decision.
It's a big decision, and it's a huge trust on the shoulders of the person being asked. If they know for sure, they should mention. If they don't know, they should remain silent. To do anything other than that, when you don't know and you just speak from conjecture, this is wrong. And when you do know, if you know something negative or even positive regarding this person, and to hold back would be incorrect also. So this is important. So to try to seek references from the right type of person. You see, somebody who is wise, somebody who is scrupulous with regards to this, as I mentioned, and not reckless. Is cautious with regards to the information or the reference that's going to be given, and not just recklessly do it. So this is important. And somebody, as we just touched upon, who knows the person, has some access to this person, is either a close friend or has been a colleague at work, for example, not a superior necessarily at work, but a colleague possibly at work, or these kind of things.
They're peers, basically. That's
peers.
What you're saying.
Peers, and somebody who's had a reasonable access to this person in a more relaxed setting. As I think we mentioned before, that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, somebody was praised in his company, and Sayyidina Umar turned to the one praising and said that, have you travelled with him? Said no. have you traded with him? He said, no. He said, how do you know anything about him then? So the point is that, Sayyidina Umar was teaching them and teaching us all, inshallah ta'ala, that, if you haven't had some kind of interaction that you're going to get access to this person or this person's true nature or character, then don't give positive or negative references. Yes, in our hearts we should have a good opinion of all Muslims, okay, but that doesn't mean that because we have a good opinion of all Muslims, when we ask ask for a reference, we put on our rose-tinted glasses and just mention everything positive. No. You see, our heart should be pure and have a good opinion. But here, speaking about something practical, speaking about something which is apparent and has been made obvious to you. And if you have knowledge, must provide it, and if you don't, then hold back.
I mean, related to that is also the fact that when one is asking about somebody, that depending on who one asks, obviously they may say wonderful things about the person, but at the same token, one shouldn't always expect or seek perfection.
Absolutely,
because that's another thing that delays and on, and it must be said on for brothers and for sisters, that's seeking perfection, and no man is perfect.
Absolutely. And this is one of the common mistakes people make, as there are no perfect people other than the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they've passed. You see, every human being we find on the face of the earth today is going to have some positives and some negatives. When in the context of marriage, a person should think about, what are the most important characteristics one requires in one's spouse, and then focus on those. You see, not seek perfection. I want somebody who's perfect in every aspect of his life. Is never going to find it.
Because some people do find it rather daunting that they're going to have to spend the rest of their lives with this person. So that's probably one of the things that drives them to find or to seek perfection. I guess. So what you're saying is that we'll major on the key things.
Precisely. And then seeking that perfection is never going to happen. And if you do find it, you've found a liar. You've found somebody who's portraying himself to be perfect or herself to be perfect, and they're not. You see. So the important.
So just because you find something that is wrong about them, depending on what is wrong, then that's not something that should necessarily detract one from marriage,
depending on what's there. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, going back to the hadith in Bukhari, spoke about a number of aspects of the individual, of the female. Okay, she's married for her beauty, married for her nobility, married for her wealth, she's married for her religion. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ identified. So the Prophet ﷺ could have said, seek all four. Seek perfection,
right?
Okay, which the Prophet ﷺ would say with regards to one's relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try to perfect it. Try to work on all aspects. Fast and pray and give charity and recite Quran and do this and do that. But as for this, we're speaking about human beings. It's going to, you'll have something and you'll miss something. So the important thing is for a person to give consideration to what's most important to them, which characteristics in this person that are most important to an individual, and then make sure those are met. Let's be clear about things. Some people require the other person to have a certain level which only he or she can judge of beauty. Okay, if that's important to the individual, fine, don't compromise on it. But don't be unrealistic.
But then the other person who's on the other side should also respect that too.
Precisely.
Because if they're seeking that, then they shouldn't be, well, actually, no, I think they're wrong. That's a learning curve for the other person to understand as well. That's what that person seeks, and they're allowed to seek that.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the time, some people think, well, no, actually, that person's being shallow, and they're looking at it. But that's actually not the case. They're allowed to look at that, and it's their right.
Yeah, precisely. It's their right. If they don't, if they've got a particular standard and this person doesn't meet that standard, and they say no for that reason, no problem. Okay. But again, as I say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
I knew that was going to pop up somewhere.
One person may find a particular
Of course,
individual incredibly attractive, and another individual will look at the same person and find no attraction whatsoever. So again, this shouldn't be considered hurtful, or shouldn't upset people or what have you. It's not an issue, and usually it's probably not to mention. It's probably not best to mention that as the reasoning for.
Of course, once you have due regard for the other person's feelings.
Not to say, actually, I'm not going to go ahead because I don't find you attractive. It's not reasonable.
No.
Just say, I'm. For whatever reason, I don't feel that this is a correct path for me. Fine, no problem, inshallah. But that's the point. Not to be unrealistic, but if you know as an individual you need a certain level here, then fine, make sure it's fulfilled. With other people, different things are more important. With some people it's really important to this individual that their spouse, the male they're looking to marry, has a stable job. They don't want to be in a situation
that's a legitimate thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Once again, it's absolutely legitimate.
Because as the females or the wife to be, the wife, it's in their estate to seek to have and be made to feel secure and safe, because they're the ones who have a responsibility, a shared responsibility, but by and large for the household,
absolutely. So,
and for the offspring. Because the early years are spent. Of the child's life is spent with the mother, so they need to be made to feel secure in order to provide that security
so they can
to the
fulfill
children.
this aspect of their role. Absolutely.
So they're not, worried or duly distracted by the things that the husband needs to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, certain people will have certain and they feel this is too important to them. Fine. If you feel that's
also their right.
That's their right. So but one shouldn't have a checklist where this has to this has to be perfect, and this has to be perfect, and this has to be perfect, and this has to be perfect. That's the point. Identify those things that for you as an individual are incredibly important. Okay,
because balanced with that, what Allah provides to Allah is the provider. Because if one says that, I'll only marry somebody who's earning £150,000 a year. What we're saying is that one should be balanced about one seeks.
One should be balanced with regards to all these aspects. So this is, a problem that many people have. They're seeking the perfect spouse. There is no such thing as a perfect spouse. Inshallah, what we hope is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if a person's sincere and follows the guidance correctly, somebody will find a spouse that has shortcomings but has lots of positive aspects as well. And what the Quran speaks about, that you live together in sakina, in tranquility and happiness. Okay, so me saying that you're not going to find somebody who is perfection doesn't mean you cannot have a happy marriage. No, that's the starting point. That's what Islam teaches, and that's the basic expectation, that the husband and wife are able to provide a tranquil setting for each other, provide a happy home for each other, provide a happy union for each other. You see, so yes, there should be a great deal of happiness, but there will be no happiness if one's expectations are unrealistic. Expectations have to be realistic, and inshallah, if they are realistic and the person follows the guidance, then inshallah they will be blessed, and they will have a happy time and enjoyable life here, and inshallah happy and enjoyable existence in the afterlife.
Inshallah, Allah give us the tawfiq to practice upon that, inshallah. And talking about common misconceptions and errors, I think there's another aspect is getting too close as well in your seeking. You said you asked me to remind you about that as well.
Yeah, this is a mistake.
How close is too close?
It's from an Islamic perspective. We don't have this understanding that you date a person prior to marrying this individual. You see, or you have a long drawn out relationship with this person. No, let's be honest about it. Essentially, you're strangers when you get married. We spoke about the hadith that yes, you're permitted to meet, you're permitted to see each other, but it's limited. So essentially you are strangers, okay, when you get to meet. So we don't have this understanding where a person's going to be dating somebody or, in love with somebody prior to the marriage. Okay. It may happen on the rare occasion in that one sitting they fall in love or what have you, but this
and it can happen.
It may happen, but this is the exception, not the norm.
When somebody looks at somebody and they fall in love.
Yeah. Or they sit with somebody and just, the way that person is, the nature of that person, they find very strongly attractive. But yeah, so this is an issue, that getting too close, okay, having this kind of boyfriend girlfriend type relationship, okay, prior to marriage, prior to engagement, this is problematic. It causes problems. One, because again, as I said, this is not the Islamic teaching. The Islamic teaching is you are essentially strangers. Okay, you try to find out about each other, you sit together a little bit, but this was never encouraged by Islam.
But what about people who have been through difficult times before? Have been through probably, people seeking to get married a second time, perhaps, and which is a common thing, and perhaps they've they need a bit more time. Is there, or because it's because their first experience wasn't. Was bad, and sometimes it can be. We won't go into how much. Well, let's face it, kind of abusive kind of relationship or marriage before, where it was very distressful and it was very upsetting and it was very injurious physically, mentally. What would you say there's a bit more laxity in trying to kind of ascertain compatibility?
Trying to find out about absolutely. That's always there.
Because there's a greater fear there, I suppose, in sort of getting it wrong again. Yeah,
absolutely. That's always there. It's permitted in that case, and maybe required more, and it's permitted even people who haven't been married before. But the issue here is where there's a relationship going on.
Right.
You see, where they're kind of, boyfriend, girlfriend, and just completely, they're having a relationship. This is where we have the boundary. Because why? Because a lot of people will say, well, I really want to know the person beforehand. Okay, I really want to spend a lot of time with this person. I want to go out with this person. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to get to know the person really well, because this is life-changing. But the reality is, you just spoke about abuse. Okay, well, the Islamic approach is you try to find out about this person, okay? Whereas if you have this relationship with this individual and you're strongly attached to this individual, then often, whether that person is abusive or not, because of your very strong attachment to this individual, it's difficult to walk away. It's no longer a rational decision. It's an emotional decision.
So it clouds your judgment.
Absolutely. So this is the point. I mean, we don't have this teaching where they're supposed to have the strong emotional attachment beforehand, because then it, as you said, it clouds your judgment and it becomes less of a rational decision. Okay, the decision to get married, there should be a good aspect of that this is a rational. Obviously a part of it is going to be, as we said, you're permitted to meet or what have you, permitted to see each other or what have you. You might have other aspects to it, but to try to maximize that aspect, you just, with a clear mind, you think, is this person good for me or not? Rather than, I need this person, because when you're emotionally attached, you do need this person, because walking away from this person is going to hurt. You see? So this is the point. This is the Islamic teaching, is that, you don't get that close. You don't, have that kind of relationship, because then it's far more likely you'll end up making the wrong decision. So this is one of the errors we should bring up, is just getting too close or having the wrong type of relationship prior to marriage.
And in the last few minutes that we have, what role does istikhara play? And what's the correct... Because we've got a misunderstanding about istikhara, so clarify that process.
Istikhara is a prayer. This was taught by the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, narrated by Sayyidina Jabir, where Sayyidina Jabir said that the Prophet ﷺ used to teach us the istikhara in all of our affairs. Just like he used to teach us a verse of the Quran. Okay, and then he went on to say, the Prophet ﷺ used to say, if something important is on your mind, then pray 2 cycles of prayer and then recite the following. And then the
That's
Prophet 2 rak'ah of prayer. And then the Prophet ﷺ went on to mention the istikhara dua. Okay, so the process for this is that if there's something that you need to make a decision with regards to, then you pray 2 cycles of prayer, nafal prayer, and then you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is with the specific prayer. Maybe we can ask Inspire to put this prayer on their website if they don't already have it. It's widely available. So a person does so. And inshallah, the understanding is the istikhara prayer helps you to make that decision. Okay, because what you're essentially saying, inshallah, we'll ask them to put a translation of the supplication as well. What you're essentially saying is, oh Allah, I don't know what is best for me, and I put it in your hands, so to speak. Please select what's best for me. Okay, so this is, subhanallah, a beautiful supplication where, if done properly and with the meaning and intention, a person is humbling himself or herself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide one to the right decision. So this is the istikhara prayer. There's always a lot of confusion and
because what are signs? Is there a sign? People are
with regards to the signs and what's there, and a lot of misconception.
So one expect a sign, a dream, I mean, I don't dream, so that'd be a problem for me.
The scholars, they said, looking at the wording of the supplication, actually, they said that you interpret your istikhara in one of 2 ways. Either you make your istikhara prayer, and then you try to move forward, and if it seems relatively easy and facilitated, then inshallah this is a sign that it's good for you. Okay. Whereas if it seems to have all kinds of abnormal, if you like, obstacles, because something like marriage, there's always obstacles, but these are out in the, they're beyond the norm obstacles, then take it as a sign that it's not meant to be.
Right.
Okay. This is one way of
condition is from Allah.
Precisely. And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guiding you away from it. And they took this, if the listeners, they read the translation of the supplication, they'll see that this is, the supplicant says, oh Allah, make it easy for me. If it's good for me, make it easy for me, facilitate it for me. So this is one way of understanding it. The other way, the ulama, they said, what you do is you wait until your heart inclines one way or the other.
Right.
No. So it's one of these 2 options. It's either you try to move ahead and move forward, and if it's facilitated and seems quite smooth, then this is the right one for you. And if it has abnormal obstacles, then it's probably not the right path.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah give us the tawfiq to practice upon what we've heard. I think there are probably some other aspects of that which we'll cover in the next program, inshallah. But may Allah give us all the tawfiq to practice upon what we have heard. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.